On a seemingly ordinary day, our protagonist and his girlfriend strolled down a quiet city street, finding a rare moment of peace from recent tests and assignments, as they chatted casually about their last proper date. This tranquil scene was shattered by a loud screech, however, as a truck behind them swerved violently, sending nearby pedestrians scattering instinctively. In an instant, the protagonist shoved his girlfriend out of the way with all his might, but without enough time to save himself. He squeezed his eyes shut and braced for the crushing impact of the massive vehicle. But to his surprise, no impact came. The world remained strangely silent and confused. He slowly opened his eyes, wondering why he was still alive. He found himself lying flat on the ground, but this was no longer the familiar street. His body felt heavy, unable to move properly, and when he tried to speak, no sound emerged, sparking a terrifying panic that he might be permanently trapped, perhaps even dead. Refusing this turn of events, he tried forcing every muscle to respond to him as he struggled awkwardly like a helpless worm. Finally managing to look around, his jaw opened wide at the sight of dozens of bodies scattered and tattered clothes slowly burning in a spreading fire with black smoke escaping into the air and nearby huts already engulfed in flames, making him wonder if this was a twisted, unreal nightmare. A twig snapped, pulling him away from those thoughts as an old man stepped into the burning scene, calmly stating that the protagonist was the sole survivor of this ruined village. Even stranger, the old man seemed to speak Chinese, yet the protagonist understood every word with complete clarity. The man repeated an odd saying, "Amiches Buddha," muttering about how fate must have led him to our boy. And as his gaze fixed on the protagonist, he saw a tiny, fragile baby reflected in those eyes, a shocking realization that his adult mind was now trapped in an infant's body. The old man effortlessly carried him, his tiny form not protesting at all. And despite his appearance, the baby's shock was evident while being held. Soon after, the man moved through the forest with incredible speed, almost gliding between the trees while casually commenting on the baby's strange calmness, comparing him to a constantly crying child named Chung Jin. The protagonist noted the man was no ordinary old man. His movements were too fast and too irregular for someone his age, like a nimble ninja cutting through the trees. Then our infant protagonist spotted a steep cliff ahead, his instincts screaming to panic, yet the old man didn't slow down, leaping cleanly off the edge with the baby still in hand, landing effortlessly on the other side, much to his own surprise that the child still hadn't cried, not even a little. The old man then gently pressed his palm against the baby's stomach, and then a warm, bright, golden glow spread across his entire body, leading to a powerful aura hot enough to melt the nearby snow. As the energy flowed in, the baby suddenly recognized it as chi transfer, a process he had only read about in stories and martial arts books, but was now undeniably real and happening to him. His vision grew heavy as the energy caused its effect, his eyelids falling as an irresistible need for sleep overwhelmed his tiny frame, his thoughts fading until everything went dark and he drifted into a deep slumber. He awoke abruptly to loud shouting, a voice yelling repeatedly, echoing through the air, snapping the infant protagonist awake. His small eyes slowly opened to a startling new sight. It seems he was no longer in the bare forest, but in the middle of what looked like an ancient Chinese compound, a massive, traditionally decorated structure towering before him, nestled deep within the mountains. As he pondered this impossible sight, a young man appeared bowing respectfully to the old man, greeting him as Sabak and inquiring about his journey. The old man, wanting to get closer, simply walked up the wide stone stairs where 4 robed men stood guard, bowing low in response to his arrival. The old man calmly greeted them, asking if anything had happened during his absence, to which one guard reported that all was well. After accepting the answer, the old man replied that he had little to report himself, his only task now being to meet the clan master. When a curious guard pointed at the baby in his arms, the old man merely stated that Chung Jin would take care of him, offering little explanation beyond finding the baby on his journey. He then walked through the tall wooden doors explaining to the unresponsive infant that this was the Zongnam clan, once one of the 9 strongest, but now not any longer. As the old man continued speaking, the baby's gaze drifted to the side where several men were training, striking battle-ready poses and even lifting their bodies into the air with no outside help at all. In that moment, he realized this wasn't a special effect, but genuine martial arts in this world, which amazed him deeply. The old man noticed his reaction, letting out a small laugh, remarking that the baby's expression almost made it seem like he understood, then praising him with a satisfied grin. He continued through the compound, eventually entering a quieter area lined with scrolls and books, probably a library or training hall of some sort, where the long-haired Chung Jin waited. Chung Jin's face brightened upon seeing his master, greeting him warmly, but without warning, the old man casually tossed the baby at the unsuspecting man. Internally yelling, the baby panicked at being thrown like an object. But before fear could set in at all, the long-haired man quickly caught him with both hands, staring at our boy in confusion as he asked if this was really a baby. The old man cut off his attempt to speak as he reminded Chung Jin that he hadn't gotten an apprentice yet, then declared the baby would be his, not even giving the poor man a valid choice. The infant MC's thoughts spiraled into chaos. An apprentice? They really wanted to make a newborn into a martial arts disciple. He knew from his past life how restrictive these sects were. They weren't allowed romance or marriage, which meant these men were likely lifelong virgins. The idea of spending his entire life training in a remote mountain with nothing but other men around and no chance at romance scared him. He didn't want this life, and as things seemed to be going, he might not have a choice in the matter. Inside one of the compound buildings, our tiny protagonist on a soft bed wiggled and lets out exaggerated baby cries, not from sadness or pain, but purposefully to gain the attention of his caretaker, the long-haired Chung Jin. It didn't take long for the worried caretaker to rush over bowl and spoon in hand, apologizing softly as he announced it was time to eat. The same young man had even given the baby a name, Gun Chung, a name that our boy sighed at loudly, hating it and his current situation. Yet he was helpless to object, able only to cry, eat, or remain quiet. The long-haired man gently scooped a spoonful of odd thick white porridge, and as it approached his mouth, the baby's eyes widened, unfamiliar with this strange food. The caretaker, speaking gently, encouraged him to eat. And though the warm porridge wasn't tasty, it wasn't terrible either, so the baby swallowed it down fast, appearing enthusiastic to Chung Jin, who failed to realize our boy was doing it purely for survival, not taste or hunger. The caretaker, seemingly calm and very gentle, blew on another spoonful to cool it, his warm, friendly smile reflecting his best efforts at caring for the newborn. For a brief moment, the baby felt this man was kind, but the thought quickly vanished as he reaffirmed his resolve not to live here forever, rejecting this unwanted life. So he cried again, louder this time, causing the confused caretaker to wonder what was wrong, checking for discomfort, even soiled diapers, but finding no real answer amidst the incessant wailing. Internally, the baby shouted in frustration, desperate to let everyone know he wasn't truly an infant. He understood everything and didn't want to be here, yet only baby cries came out. Chung Jin had already tried guessing if he was sleepy, but that wasn't it either. And so the crying continued, filling the room and even reaching the outside for everyone to hear. As time passed, however, the cries slowly weakened until exhausted by his own noise. The baby's voice faded into silence, allowing the relieved caretaker to breathe out a small sigh of peace. Gently setting the quiet baby on the bed, Chung Jin decided to seize the moment for training. Our baby protagonist watched him as he walked toward the window. An infuriating inability to form coherent words frustrated his attempts to speak. The caretaker then sat, postured and cross-legged, covered in the moonlight. His eyes closed as his breathing slowed, signifying a part of his martial arts training. With each deep breath, a faint blue glow slowly spread around his body, growing brighter and more visible with every inhale and exhale. Watching him this whole time, our boy grew curious, impulsively trying to copy the breathing rhythm, his breathing pattern rising and falling in sync with Chung Jin, and unexpectedly, a faint weak glow began to form around his tiny body. The caretaker, fully focused, didn't notice right away, but then a soft sound cut through the room. Out of nowhere, the baby managed a single distorted word, Mr., causing Chung Jin's eyes to snap open immediately, surprised that a baby so young could speak, that single jumbled word leaving him wondering. Turning quickly toward the baby, his surprise clear, he asked reluctantly if the baby had indeed spoken, but the baby didn't respond, seemingly preoccupied, as instead he was celebrating internally for having uttered even that single broken word. The caretaker's surprise softened into a gentle, curious smile. He encouraged the baby to try again, yet the baby wasn't listening. His mind was still racing, replaying the event. It had happened after copying the breathing technique, that steady rhythm triggering an energy he could feel in his tiny body, which he figured must be chi. This realization brought back the memory of the old man who had carried him jumping off that cliff as if gravity meant nothing to him, confirming those weightless, effortless jumps were the result of deep chi training. Driven by this thought, the baby closed his eyes again, trying to repeat his actions while the curious caretaker watched from above. But when he tried to speak, nothing useful came out. Only useless baby babble escaped. After waiting a few moments, The caretaker quickly turned away, chuckling a little bit, convincing himself he must have imagined it as a baby so young couldn't possibly talk. On the bed, the baby fumed silently, annoyed at himself, wishing he could make it happen again and wondering if more practice might help. On another bright day, birds took to the sky. While inside the quiet room, the baby lay still, breathing in and out with determination, a faint energy forming around his small frame, gradually making his body feel lighter. With enough focus, he managed to roll onto his stomach, which was a significant feat for a baby this small, and a rush of excitement surged through him as he realized chi training wasn't just an energy boost, but also accelerated his physical growth, which made him feel like if he continued, he would grow quickly. However, that thought ended abruptly as his head became too heavy, and with his arms too weak to lift himself, he flopped back onto the bed face down, unable to move. Lying there, breathing became difficult. And with his entire body pressed against the bedding, a brief panic set in, but he forced himself calm, steadily resuming the breathing rhythm, gathering energy once more. It was then that the caretaker suddenly burst through the door, as if he sensed that something was wrong, rushing over to the bed, carefully lifting the baby and holding him close. The caretaker then asked if the baby had been trying to practice the tail technique, his own breathing technique, a realization striking him that the baby must have been copying his earlier actions. He stared closely, studying the baby's face and body like a puzzle, muttering that despite everything, the baby didn't look like a genius, as if there was some special look that gave it away. Still, he let his thoughts wander, imagining that if the baby proved to be naturally intelligent, he might become a scholar instead of a run-off-the-mill martial artist, a thought that brought a small smile to his face. After that, he glanced out the window, watching snowflakes gently fall, covering the trees outside in white, hoping for spring to arrive soon. 2 years later, time and seasons had passed, and within the same ancient compound, the baby was now a small boy. He sat on the ground under a thick tree, a solid rock in his hand, his breathing causing a faint blue energy to surround him with every inhale and exhale as he focused on the rock in his hand. A moment later, the energy flared, and the rock in his palm shattered into several clean pieces. Not far away, the long-haired Chung Jin stood watching, his attention peaking at the sight. He called out the boy's name, Gun Chung, rushing forward, stunned by what he thought he had just witnessed. The long-haired man rushed toward the boy, his quick movement grabbing the boy's attention. It looked like something serious had happened. Without slowing, he leaped high toward the tree where the boy sat, a sudden jump that completely shocked the boy. Still in the air, the long-haired man shouted, "You can't eat rocks." His loud voice echoed across the area before he landed firmly next to the boy with practiced ease. He immediately reached for the boy's hand, and as he grabbed it, small particles fell out from the boy's palm. The long-haired man's eyes narrowed, then he calmed down, asking if the boy had just been playing with sand before lecturing him not to eat sand or rocks. The boy tried to explain, but his words were still unclear. His new tiny frame wasn't used to speaking, so he only made sounds the man didn't understand. Internally, the boy had already decided to keep his ability to use chi a secret for now, smiling quietly to himself, feeling no need to tell anyone yet. Unaware of the boy's thoughts, the long-haired man simply picked him up, stating they were going inside, and began walking back toward the building without another word. Years passed quickly. By age 7, Gun Chung was no longer a small boy. Training had become his daily life. Inside the training grounds, he moved his small body steadily and smoothly, his breathing sharp and controlled with each inhale and exhale. He lifted one leg straight up, balanced briefly, then swept it down fast. His movements flowed, twisting through countless martial arts forms, hands and legs moving without hesitation. As he continued, a clear, strong flow of chi built up around him, moving in rhythm with his body. He focused on that energy, soon holding it in his hands. The chi followed his movements naturally, part of him. Clenching his fist, feeling its solid weight, he thought, this is what chi movements truly feels like. Just then, his master, the long-haired man, called out, "Gun Chung," from behind. The boy turned, respectfully addressing him as master. The long-haired man then informed him that starting tomorrow, Gun Chung would go to a place called Taepyeongjin. The words didn't make the boy happy. His master explained that at 7, it was time for proper martial artist study, but Gun Chung clearly wasn't thrilled and didn't want this. The master didn't mind his initial reaction, reminding the boy of his previous words. True strength meant stepping into the world among common people, as staying hidden in the mountain wouldn't make him strong. This was pilgrimage training. Gun Chung understood. Disciples sent off with only a sword, traveling dangerous lands, meeting other martial artists, strangers, and facing danger alone. He'd heard many didn't return. Some died without achieving anything. The boy sighed aloud, recognizing the real risk. Noticing his concern, the master reassured him. Gunchong wouldn't go completely alone, but would first be sent to a Zongnam clan alumnus or a respected company to learn about the world, as it wasn't safe to send a child off wandering. He added that this was why Gunchong needed to become a faithful disciple, but the boy remained frustrated, not encouraged. He spoke up, expressing dissatisfaction with martial artists' strict rules, particularly that they couldn't marry or have a normal love life, an idea that deeply annoyed him. But the master simply laughed, telling the boy the Zongnam clan allowed marriage, so he needn't worry, an unexpected answer that surprised Gunchong and eased some frustration. Soon after, Gunchong made his way into the Zongnam clan's main compound, his steps steady through the large gates, his thoughts busy. He knew he'd enter as a third-generation disciple, though his age was closer to the fourth, anticipating a big age gap between himself and most other third-generation disciples due to his early start. As he stepped further in, a robed figure walked steadily toward him. As they got closer, Gunchong realized it was a woman, and a very beautiful one at that. He noticed it right away. His first honest thought being that she was hella hot. The woman slowly stepped toward him with a light smile, her calm steps non-threatening. As she got closer, she asked in a clear voice if he was Chung, catching the boy completely off guard since he hadn't expected her to know his name. She confirmed, repeating his full name, Gun Chung, then casually introduced herself as Gun Young. The moment he heard her name, he straightened, bowed slightly, and greeted her properly as Saju, the title for a senior female disciple. Even after greeting her, he couldn't hold back his curiosity, asking how she knew his name. She answered plainly, saying she was there to pick him up. Her warm, welcoming words combined with her pretty face made his heart skip a beat, and he thought life here might not be as bad as he imagined. She then turned and walked away, expecting him to follow. He didn't hesitate, matching her steps toward another building inside the clan grounds. Once they arrived, Gun Young casually handed him a long staff, leaving him confused and wondering its purpose. Realizing his uncertainty, she turned, asking what he meant. To her, it was obvious their hands-on training was beginning. Glancing around, he noticed a circular boundary on the ground and asked about it. She immediately told him that once sparring began, he couldn't step outside the circle, a training rule. Without wasting time, she raised her staff above her head, spinning it fast, cutting through the air with a sharp sound. It was flashy and old-fashioned. His thoughts didn't stop the pressure from her spinning attack. He felt the wind even before she fully swung. He asked if this was truly just practice, as it didn't feel light. She didn't slow, stepping forward with a series of fast, clean strikes, too quick for a new spare to follow. He tried to block, but his body couldn't keep up even though he recognized the technique. She rushed him again, ready to swing hard, but noticed his arms trembling as he struggled to block. She immediately stopped, asking why he hadn't mastered the basics. He shakily replied it was his very first sparring session. Her expression shifted. Despite it being his first sparring match, she noticed he was instinctively blocking some strikes, not cleanly but noticeably. She then decided to show him more moves, twirling her staff again at a much faster, controlled pace. He watched closely, something about her movements catching his attention, sparking an idea. Right then, he asked her to show that exact attack again. She agreed without hesitation, but added he wouldn't be able to block it anyway. Stepping back a few meters, she raised her staff once more. She began spinning it fast, the staff cutting through the air with a constant noise, then suddenly jumped, aiming her staff downward. Instead of striking him, she slammed the staff into the ground right beside him, creating a heavy thud that sent a shock through his legs. The strength behind that blow made him nervous smile. Was this really the attack she expected him to block? Despite that thought, he decided to try anyway, taking a proper stance, feet firmly planted, gripping his staff tightly. Gun Young gave him a long look that clearly asked, does he really think he can pull this off? She didn't protest, accepting his challenge, and took her own battle stance. Staff held firmly, ready to move. She jumped again, repeating the same attack. The moment she launched, his instincts kicked in. He raised his staff, blocking her strike just in time. The impact made him struggle, gritting his teeth, but he held his ground. Not stopping, he stepped back, gathered strength, then came at her with his own attack, letting out a loud battle cry as he swung forward with everything he had. After blocking her strike, the boy swung his staff forward, and Gun Young quickly saw he wasn't blindly reacting, but had read her opening and was countering, which surprised her for a beginner. She swiftly blocked his attack with her own staff, holding firm and expecting more. But after all that effort, he just stood there, no longer attacking. This confused her, and she asked what he was doing, reminding him to attack openings without hesitation. Yet the boy replied honestly that he never thought about attacking, explaining he couldn't just strike without planning. He smiled casually, and Gun Yung then understood why he was called a genius. His mind worked fast even if his body hadn't fully caught up. Not wanting to stop, the boy took another stance, looked at her determinedly, and asked to continue, which she accepted. They clashed again, staff against staff, strikes echoing as they moved around the circle until the sun set, their sparring not stopping until night. 2 years later, their training was beyond simple staff work, and the young protagonist now faced Gun Yung in hand-to-hand combat within the training circle. She moved with sharp, quick strikes, and he shifted to match her pace, trading blows. Gun Yung asked if he still used memorization to defend, and he answered, smiling and staying still, that martial arts was a battle of tactics. And since arm and leg movements were limited, his method predicted and defended well. Even as he spoke, she attacked, but he dodged smoothly, slipping past her kicks and punches, and she noticed he wasn't moving randomly but reading her every step and reacting in real time. This made her more serious. She adjusted her stance, openly challenging him to block her next move, then charged at full speed with a battle cry, raising her leg to attack. The boy's face changed, looking surprised for a second, but Gun Yung didn't hold back, kicking forward with full force. At the last second, the boy jumped back quickly, and her foot hit the ground where he had been, scattering dust. He landed a few steps back, skidding to regain balance. Gun Yung straightened up, smiling confidently, saying he got lucky dodging that one and doubted he could do it again. She then charged without hesitation, swinging a strong kick that forced him to block. Their limbs clashed, and he stepped back slightly but held his ground, taking a low stance ready for her next fast, powerful strikes. He blocked the first blow, then the second, his arms moving quickly, his focus unwavering, and then something shifted instantly as a strange, powerful energy appeared around him, powerful enough to stun his opponent. Gun Yung instinctively stepped back, not knowing what was happening, but feeling an invisible wall around him. She looked carefully, then asked directly what he was doing. He simply said it was a defense using learned techniques, adding that by alternating between the 2nd, 4th, and 9th forms, he could build an almost perfect defense. Hearing this made her raise her eyebrows, and she asked how he linked the 6th and 9th forms so smoothly, to which he answered without hesitation that he used chi flow. He told her to look closely, then brought his hands together, gathering a soft light between his palms, slowly forming it into a ball of chi energy. She watched silently. He then stretched and shaped the chi into a long thin string, moving it carefully through the air, demonstrating how he could control its flow with precision. As the energy built, a sudden burst of bright light flashed around him, making Gun Yung flinch and shield her eyes, startled by the brightness. When the light faded, the boy stood calmly, adding that incorporating the Taiyul Chi technique was a big part of this defense. After explaining his defense, the young boy thought deeper about it, standing quietly amidst faint chi traces, pondering the technique he just showed. He wondered if the Taiyul methods were flexible enough for him, as his movements needed to stay smooth and connected for the technique to work. Even one broken motion could make the whole form fail. While he spoke his thoughts aloud, Gun Yung just stared, surprised, finding it hard to believe he was only 9 years old. He talked about complicated martial principles like common sense, breaking things down so calmly it seemed like he trained for decades, not years. Eventually, she gave a faint, cocky smile, a teasing look on her face as she told him he learned a lot from her beating him up during training, her words sounding like a joke, but also wanting credit for his growth. Our boy genius didn't get to argue. Before he could speak, she suddenly charged without warning, announcing she'd attack with an improved form. But instead of looking worried, the boy simply replied that all attack patterns looked similar to him anyway. As she approached, he prepared and blocked the first move as expected, but then she changed her target mid-motion, hitting his side sharply. The impact made him flinch and growl in pain. He grabbed his side, bending over, thinking how suddenly she switched her attack point, catching him off guard. Before he could process it, she moved again at full speed, jumping into the air, coming straight down with a strong overhead kick. Seeing this, he quickly straightened up, smiled, and took a defensive stance, muttering that such a kick would be easy to block. As she came down, her foot met his defense perfectly. He blocked the kick solidly, even using his chi shield. For a brief moment, he thought he had handled it, but as the impact settled, he felt a sting through his guard, not enough to knock him back, but enough to realize something was wrong. His shield hadn't fully absorbed the force this time. He looked at her in confusion, wondering aloud how she got through his defense. She didn't wait for him to ask again before explaining with an excited look that she used a move called the Jae Gong technique. And since his fighting style relied heavily on memorizing patterns, she could easily break through by switching to an irregular, unpredictable movement. She then gave him a playful, almost mocking smile, adding that this meant he couldn't block everything just by memorization alone. Hearing this, the young boy exhaled a small sigh, not in frustration, but in realization. He understood her point even if it annoyed him slightly. Seeing his reaction, Gun-young softened, telling him not to be too disappointed, for he was only 9 while she was 19, a clear difference in experience and strength. She gave him a warm smile to encourage him, and he returned the gesture with a small grin. Turning away slightly, he said he hadn't expected this result, but quickly added that she should just wait because he was going to figure something out, mentioning heading to the library to think things through. Then, without waiting for her reply, he turned and ran off in that direction. She called out for him to stop, shouting after him as he ran, but he didn't listen, his small frame quickly disappearing down the path. Gun-young stood still for a moment, speechless. Then she let out a quiet sigh, thinking back to the Jae-gong technique. Even though he hadn't beaten her, he had managed to block at least part of her attack, and that level of reaction and adaptability wasn't normal for someone his age. Watching him run off, determined to study more, only confirmed what she already suspected. Maybe he really was a genius after all. In the quiet, dark library, a single candle lit the boy sitting cross-legged, head buried in a book, surrounded by open, stacked, and scattered books, showing he had been working for a long time. He picked up a nearby book on Jae-gang technique basics, flipping pages until he found the 7 rules for success. After a moment, he suddenly snapped the book shut with a loud curse. Clearly frustrated, he dropped the book, lay on his back on the cold floor, and muttered to the dark ceiling that it had been a whole year, emphasizing the long time past. His mind went back to a memory. In the sparring circle, his Saju moved fast, blurring around him, her feet barely touching the ground. She then attacked with incredible speed from an unexpected angle. He thought his guard was up, but she slipped through, hitting him cleanly and shocking him. She didn't stop, attacking again immediately, which he dodged, then blocked another strike and barely evaded a fourth that followed quickly. With a wry smile, she jumped slightly and sent a strong kick to his chest, connecting and knocking him off his feet, sending his small body tumbling backward and rolling outside the sparring circle. The match ended there, and she dismissed him for the day. Lying on the ground, struggling up, he heard her say he'd gotten stronger, but warned that his current level still wouldn't defend him against a true Jae-gong Fist's master, a memory that stuck with him. Back in the library, still on the floor staring at the ceiling, he replayed that scene, asking himself in disappointment if this was his limit, if his progress was over. The candle next to him was almost out, and he muttered that it would die soon, wondering if he should just give up and sleep. As if on cue, the flame weakened, growing smaller and dimmer until it disappeared, plunging the room into darkness. In that quiet moment, something clicked. He pieced together his chi control, T-Yul technique, and energy flow, realizing if he released inner chi outward, it would flow in a connected stream. As this thought cleared, a faint green glow formed around him, spreading evenly, a thin but clear layer so tangible it pushed away candle smoke. His eyes shot open. Lying still, he realized the true meaning of T-Yul wasn't just breathing or moving chi, but fully connecting it, making something stable and whole. The next day, he met his Saju in their usual training area, confidently telling her he finally understood the Jae-gong technique. She stared, surprised by his serious tone as he was still a child, not yet 10, making such bold words hard to take seriously, but he didn't waver, remaining very certain. Wanting to see, she raised her fists and took her stance, saying she would test him, and he agreed without hesitation, ready to show what he discovered. As sparring began, the boy calmly took a stance and demonstrated, the same green energy slowly surrounding him again, spreading evenly into a clear, solid chi layer, this time bright and perfectly controlled. The girl widened her eyes, surprised, exclaiming that what he was doing wasn't a Jae-gong technique, but he calmly responded that he considered this the result of connecting Taeyul chi techniques with everything else he had learned. Still surprised and in awe, she asked him how he was doing that. Holding his stance, the boy honestly told her it was hard to explain with words, but if she truly wanted to know, he'd try after their match. Hearing that, the girl immediately shifted stance and sprung into action, charging without hesitation, saying she'd see for herself if this counted as a Jae-gong technique, closing the distance quickly with precise steps. As she swung her fist for the first hit expecting contact, her hand instead touched the green energy, which held her in place before bouncing her back like a recoiling wall. Unwilling to accept that, she repeatedly struck the shield, her fierce battle cries echoing. But no matter how hard she hit, the shield wouldn't break or even crack, blocking everything. While she attacked, the old man from the beginning, who had carried the baby through the clan gates, watched quietly with sharp eyes from a high tree branch. As he watched the boy's cheese shield withstand every blow, a small smile formed, thinking this was an important day for the clan, not ordinary, and something even adults would struggle with. He continued watching, proudly thinking his disciple, Chung Jin, the boy's master, had raised an excellent disciple. Back in the circle, the girl kept swinging, but the boy stayed calm inside his shield, easily blocking everything without the slightest opening, which frustrated her more. Lifting off the ground, she changed approach, pulling her leg back and launching a powerful kick at the shield with more strength, briefly smiling, expecting to see a crack or reaction, but nothing happened. The shield absorbed the blow completely, and the boy just stood there with a small, wry smile, fully protected by the green energy. Then he focused his chi and pushed it outward, the green energy surging like a wave, striking the girl and pushing her far back, making her dig her heels in and skid to a halt, trying not to fall. When she regained footing, she internally admitted his counterattack wasn't bad, feeling respect but not wanting to show it openly. She looked at him closely, sighed, and realized to win, she needed to step up her game. Then, unexpectedly, she planted her foot, and a huge burst of fierce energy exploded from her, crumbling the ground beneath her and pushing away dust and stone. She clenched her fists, tensing her body, resolved that if regular techniques failed, she would tear through his shield with raw strength. With her mind made up, she charged forward like a wild animal, fast, brutal, and aggressive, the force behind her steps clear. She came at him with a tiger's fierceness, eyes locked on target, fully determined to break through his seemingly perfect defense this time. The fight between them quickly heated up as she rushed at him, putting all her strength into a single punch. Her fist slammed against his green energy shield with a heavy impact, a small dent of pressure running through it, and noticing she pushed through a little, a small smile appeared, proving progress since her punch didn't bounce off. The two didn't stop. Her fist kept boring through, and his shield kept taking the hit, nicely resisting, turning this into a test of resilience. Up in the distance, the old man watched from a tree branch, his eyes narrowing as he observed the boy holding his ground, questioning if what he saw was truly the Tai Yul Chi technique. On the ground, sparring continued. The boy had a cocky smile, clearly having a plan. With a loud cry, he channeled green energy straight into the shield, a strong pulse bursting out and pushing the girl back several steps, making her lose balance for a second, and he immediately claimed victory as his defense worked perfectly. She stumbled, but before she fully recovered, the boy charged, foot first, kicking her right in the chest, sending her flying back. Unlike before, this time he didn't just defend. He counterattacked. She landed some distance away, hitting the ground violently, and without waiting for her to recover, our boy genius calmly told her what she felt wasn't the usual Jai-Gong technique. She pushed herself up, confused but determined, asking him again how he did that. Brushing dust off, he plainly explained he used a variation, his own form of the technique. The scene shifted to a quiet forest path where the protagonist walked with his master, Chung Jin, the mood calm but serious. He asked his master why the clan leader had suddenly called them, and Chung Jin admitted he wasn't sure but suspected it was about the boy whose reputation had spread throughout the main clan after recent exploits. Gun Chung was surprised, not thinking people talked about him that much, and asked if it was true, probably thinking his master exaggerated. Soon, they reached the compound, and a guard quickly stepped out, greeting Chung Jin and recognizing Gun Chung, leading them to the main hall. They stood before the clan leader's door, and a voice from inside told them to enter. The clan leader, an old man with a long beard, welcomed them warmly. Though he'd seen Gun Chung many times, this was their first proper conversation. Gun Chung greeted the old man, bowing slightly, calling him clan leader and himself his disciple. The clan leader wanted to speak to the boy alone, so he asked Chung Jin to leave, and Gun Chung was caught off guard, but his master quickly agreed, stepping out without protest. Alone, the clan leader got straight to the point, saying he knew the boy wondered why he was called, and Gun Chung quickly politely confirmed his curiosity. The old clan leader was impressed by Gun Chung's behavior, finding him calm, focused, and mature for his age, renowned as a genius, yet polite and well-mannered. He then added that while he called him to talk about his accomplishments, that wasn't the only reason. First, there was an important question. What do you think the meaning of Tai Yul is? The boy looked at his hands for a moment, then calmly explained Tai Yul meant a big connection, something invisible but always there. As he slowly moved his hands, green energy swirled around them, and he said it was a connection linking him directly to the world itself. The energy kept flowing, and as he played with it, he explained how it felt like a continuous, never-stopping stream passing through him and around him. The old clan leader listened closely, confused but curious, finally asking what he meant by connected to the world. The boy honestly answered that when he released his chi, it sometimes felt like merging with everything around him, as if the boundary between him and the chi was blurred and the world disappeared, becoming part of something much bigger, part of the world as a whole. Hearing that, the old man was stunned, never expecting such a simple explanation to carry something so deep, thinking it unbelievable that a boy so young could describe something even experienced martial artists failed to fully understand. Soon, the old man's thoughts drifted, reflecting on the universe, telling himself it was vast and eternal, embracing all things with everything flowing as one, and what the boy just said aligned almost perfectly with that. In his mind, he realized this might be the great truth he had searched for. Later that night, under a clear moonlit sky, the old man sat cross-legged in meditation, eyes closed, letting his thoughts settle, the wind still and everything quiet as a soft glowing energy radiated from his body. Another elderly man, even older, appeared, approaching slowly and congratulating the clan leader, saying the child seemed valuable. The clan leader looked up, greeting him respectfully as his Sayang, their clear bond showing deep respect. The clan leader urged his Sayang to listen to the child's words, but Sayang waved it off, saying hearing a few words wouldn't change anything for someone his age, being stubborn but firm. Both men then looked forward at the boy, just a few steps away, fast asleep, his chest rising and falling steadily, oblivious. The clan leader was surprised when Sayang stretched his hand toward the boy, calmly saying he planned to leave his final will to this sleeping child. A moment later, blue energy burst from his hand, bright and strong, lighting up the entire place like lightning, the glow spreading far, startling animals in the nearby forest. The clan leader tried to stop him, but his Sayang didn't allow interference, explaining he had already sealed his chi inside the boy, and the seal would keep it from overwhelming him for now. The Sayang lowered himself to the ground, kneeling, saying that when the right time came, the seal would break, and then the clan leader must guide Gunchong properly and not forget this. He called the boy the future of the Zongnam clan and entrusted everything to him. Then the older man closed his eyes, his strength fading, his breathing slowing, saying he needed to rest now. The clan leader dropped to his knees next to him, calling out to his Sayang in anguish, but the decision was made. Time passed quickly. A bright day came, and children sparring filled the air, their small cries echoing as they clashed on the training field, some with wooden weapons, others blocking clumsily, messy, but how they'd grow stronger. Looking from above, Gun Chung watched quietly, then bent his knees and jumped forward, landing among the sparring children, his sudden appearance shocking a few smaller kids, pausing their playful fight. He straightened up, standing tall, determined, older now at 16. He declared he was ready to fully step into the world of martial arts, his journey only beginning, this moment marking the start of something exciting. Time passed quickly as seasons changed, bringing spring. On a clan building, our boy stood alone, enjoying the fresh air, bright sun, and blooming trees. He shifted his gaze to the training grounds below where younger children sparred, then jumped down from the building, landing quickly among them. As they trained, he decided to practice his own techniques, lifting his hands and bringing them together, forming a circle. Blue energy gathered between his palms, slowly swirling into a bright, dense form, which he shaped into a long, sharp, threaded blade, a sword made of energy that hovered faintly. He repeated this until several identical blades floated in a line, then made them spin rapidly around him, creating a blade guard, a rotating barrier of blades. Nearby blossom petals touching the blades instantly sliced apart, an impressive sight to the children who stopped sparring to watch, their eyes lighting up as they cheered loudly, calling him incredible. He smiled, encouraging them that with serious training, they too could reach his level, clearly inspiring them. But the moment didn't last. A clan messenger called out, summoning him to the Weimajon. The boy immediately stopped practice, understanding, and as he followed, he wondered why he was called, finding nothing wrong he might have done. Arriving at the Wei Muzzin, he stepped inside, announcing his summons and bowing. The man behind the desk looked up, told him to approach, then stated an emergency had come up and no one else was available. Our protagonist asked the situation, and the man explained he had informed the boy's master, meaning he could leave. Unsatisfied, he asked where he was going. The man then told him to eliminate mountain bandits, wishing him luck. The boy's face tightened slightly, not happy about the task, but understood it was in order, so he agreed. Soon after, he traveled alone through quiet mountain paths, his thoughts on the mission. He stopped, felt hungry, and decided to speed up. He crouched, then jumped down the mountainside, moving quickly, descending in no time. Reaching the bottom, he entered a bustling Chinese city, streets crowded with people, open shops, merchants, and shuffling feet. A sweet aroma from a food stall caught his attention, reminding him of civilization after so long focused on training. He refocused, remembering he needed to find the Taeyul Tavern and decided to ask for directions. He spotted a man, stepped forward, and stopped him. The man turned, instantly realizing he was a martial artist, asking for confirmation, and our boy quickly replied, looking surprised and nervous. The man's excitement then faded, replaced by a nervous, shaky voice, but he still responded respectfully. Our boy then asked if he knew the Taeyul Tavern, and the man nodded quickly, stating its popularity. He crouched and drew a small map in the dirt, carefully showing the direction. The boy followed with his eyes, memorizing the route. Wanting to move, our protagonist gave a polite bow and thanked the man, who quickly returned the gesture, showing the respect for martial artists then. As the boy walked away, a faint smile appeared. He noticed people's respect for martial artists, which made him walk with more confidence, a lighter step, and a clearer direction toward the tavern. After a short walk, he reached his destination, the Taeyul Tavern. He stepped inside, announcing himself as a third-generation disciple come to meet his sayangs. Inside, 3 men waited. Jin Juxin, tall with light hair, calm and confident. Huang Lihyun, shorter with brown hair and sharp eyes, and Hong Jukman with long hair. All 3 greeted him. Huang Lihyun looked closely, commenting with surprise how young the boy was, then introduced himself, adding he was also called the Blue Gust Blade. Jin Juxin then stepped forward, telling the boy he had heard much about the young prodigy from the main clan, making our boy feel awkward and laugh nervously. Jin then explained they were heading to Sukchun to meet Taeyul guards and plan dealing with the bandits, his words firm and serious. The protagonist's expression grew serious, asking if there was solid information about the bandits yet, and Jin Juxin replied they'd discuss everything on the way. Without wasting another moment, Jin turned toward the door and started walking, telling everyone to follow. The other 2 sayangs followed, and the boy did too. Later, they rode horses down the road in a small formation and soon stopped in front of a small building. One man called out, saying they were from the mainland and asking for Hyun Soo. From inside, a short man shouted he was Hyun Soo. The group dismounted. The 3 men introduced themselves, then introduced the boy as Gun Chung, a third-generation main clan disciple. The boy stepped forward, greeted Hyun Soo respectfully, calling him Sayung. Hyun Soo, surprised and curious, was stuck on the boy being from the main clan. A moment later, Hyun Soo bowed, acknowledging the boy's status, internally thinking this was the rumored Gun Chung, his reputation clearly far spread. Hyun Soo then asked for time to prepare their rooms, but his curiosity led him to ask what brought them there. His suspicions were confirmed when Jin briefly explained the situation. Not long after, night fell. The group gathered inside around a table lit by a small candle. Hyun Soo sat down, reporting what he learned from homeless people. What had been happening wasn't regular bandit work. That statement made everyone pause. Jin frowned, asking if it's not bandits, then who is it? Hyun Soo's face dulled as he firmly answered it was the dark cult. Hearing those 2 words, our protagonist froze, shocked. A dark cult? The idea alone made him uneasy. Bandits were one thing, but a dark cult was dangerous and unpredictable. This was no longer a simple task. Things were much more serious than he expected. After learning this was the dark cult's work, our protagonist looked alarmed as the conversation continued. Jin Sayung, the light-haired man, remarked on the situation's seriousness, speculating if they could handle it. Hearing this, our protagonist questioned if the dark cult was really that strong, making everyone turn to him, seemingly astounded by his question. Huang Sayung, the brown-haired man, asked how he knew nothing about the dark cult, calling them the epitome of martial arts. He continued, explaining that while he didn't mean to insult the main clan, its leader couldn't make the top 16 martial arts masters, yet the dark cult had 2 members in that elite group. This fact weighed heavy on everyone, now showing worried looks, while the protagonist was deeply surprised. The brown-haired man kept talking, naming the 2 dark cult members, Dark Master Chun Unma and Blood King Suk Chung. He then told a story to illustrate their strength. A few decades ago, during an all-out brawl, one of the 16 dark cult members went through a field of 10,000 Mongolian soldiers alone, managed to slice their lord's neck, and came back alive. To add to the story, the light-haired man spoke up, stating that man was called the Dark Viceroy of Death. The brown-haired man continued, asserting all 16 members were like that, asking how anyone could compete, adding that no other factions, even well-known clans, had many members in the top 16. To finish, he asked our protagonist if he now understood the seriousness, but our boy was speechless. Jin So-young then spoke, saying he'd gather information tomorrow to see if they could handle this alone. Standing up, he told everyone else to rest for the night, and they agreed. The next day, in a bamboo forest, 3 cloaked figures conversed about their situation. One asked for orders, and another informed him they had been told to retreat because their enemies were now on high alert. The green-eyed cloaked man asked who the Zongnam clan sent, and the gray-haired cloaked man replied, "They sent the 3rd-generation disciple Gun Chung and the 3 swords of Hyun Chung," referring to our protagonist and his 3 Saiyongs. Hearing this, the 3rd cloaked man asked if they couldn't handle them alone. The gray-haired man reminded him they were asked to make no errors, causing the 3rd cloaked man to say those words were more advice than an order, giving them the final say. Leaving no room for further discussion, the green-haired, cloaked man ended the argument, stating they would eliminate their enemies and return afterward instead of retreating. The green-haired man added that since the enemy already knew about them, there was no harm in taking them out. The 3rd man then asked who their primary target was, and he responded, saying it was Gun Chung. The others agreed, and soon the 3 filled the air with chants of lethal intent. Back at Hyun-Soo's building, our protagonist struggled with his situation, hiding fearfully in bed under blankets. Frustrated, he shot up crying out, then sighed, asking himself why his very first assignment was like this, tasked with fighting the strongest guys on his first mission. What rotten luck. But almost immediately, he shrugged it off, stating that work was still work. Outside his room, he heard a greeting and guessed Jin So-young must be back. He stepped out, confirmed his suspicion, and saw the light-haired So-young was back and already calling everyone for a meeting. Gathered around the table, Hong So-young, the long-haired one, asked if their targets were already gone, and Jin So-young replied it seemed so, as the enemies had apparently fled due to their group's unexpected actions, confusing the other 3 men. Hwang So-hyung, the brown-haired man, then asked where the target item was, and Jin So-hyung responded he had found its location, and their job was to retrieve it. Hwang then asked how, and Jin replied that since the item seemed sold off, they simply needed to buy it back. With a curious look, Hwang asked where it was, and Jin said Xian. Hearing this, Hwang wondered aloud how the enemy made it so far and sold it so soon. Jin chalked it up to the dark cult's capabilities. Thankful most of them had already left, making the area a little safer for now. While Hwang expressed frustration, wondering what the dark cult gained from this, Jin was already thinking of their next action, getting up and stating they needed to head out now. And if they messaged the mainland, those there would figure out what to do. The others agreed, getting up as well. But before our boy Genius could leave, Hwang called him, asking if he'd like to go for a drink, much to his surprise. This question made our protagonist remember his past life, recalling how he used to drink all the time, but this would be his first in this life. Soon after, they were drinking together. But since our protagonist wasn't drinking much, Hwang questioned why, and the boy responded it was his first time trying to pace himself. Hwang agreed, stating the boy's large size implied a higher tolerance than he actually had. Our boy then stated he wouldn't do something so reckless as drinking himself into a stupor while on a mission. But seeing Hwang already doing just that, he noted the comment's boldness. Hearing this, our protagonist then boasted the main clan already knew about his boldness. But before he could say more, Hwang fell face first onto the table, spilling his drink, truly drunk out of his mind, and passed out. Our protagonist was quite shocked by this turn of events. Meanwhile, outside, one of the cloaked men from before lurked with a sinister grin. Things were about to become quite difficult for our genius boy. A little while after their drinking session, our protagonist carried his drunk So-young Hwang on his back, sighing heavily that he couldn't just leave him there. Immediately after that, he noticed something nearby, and while mysterious cloaked men moved stealthily on the rooftop, our boy thought something was wrong. He instantly looked below, cursing as he realized he stood on a restraining circle, but almost immediately calmed down, stating it was too weak to hold him, wondering if it was just to hide him from view. As soon as he looked up, he saw one of the cloaked men standing right in front of him, asking if he was Gun Chung, the 3rd-generation disciple of the Zongnam clan. Our protagonist looked at him smiling, asking what would happen if he said yes, while one of the mysterious cloaked men with green hair showing slightly seemed ready to attack, and soon 2 of them charged straight for him, threatening his life. Seeing this, he remarked in a shaky voice that this was his first ambush, and not wanting the burden of carrying a man on his back while fighting, he threw Hwang off, letting him land straight on the ground, telling the drunk man to give him some time. After that, he struck a battle-ready pose, preparing a countermeasure against the rushing enemies, and soon activated his power, causing the enemy to wonder what kind of power this was even as he charged. As the enemy slashed his sword, a green energy shield protected our protagonist from the attack. And not expecting this, The enemy was quite stunned, pushed back by the energy, forced to jump back and skid to a stop. Soon the green-haired, cloaked man smiled, stating the protagonist seemed more prepared than thought. But now charging again with his friend, he declared only death awaited our protagonist. Seeing them charge, he wondered if he could take both at once. But putting that thought aside, he continued his martial arts formations, probably to strengthen the shield. On reaching him, one of the men slashed again but was shocked when the protagonist grabbed his sword and shattered it with one squeeze of his hand. After that, our protagonist outstretched his hands using the energy that exploded from them as a powerful attack against his enemies. He then wore a menacing look, staring at the bodies of his enemies lying flat on the ground, seemingly unconscious. Letting out a sigh of relief, our protagonist stated the men had surely surprised him, then turned around and began to walk away, asking himself what made the men think they could beat him as they barely put up a fight. He made his way back to his unconscious Sakyang, and realizing he was still out, he asked himself what he'd do with him. But in that moment, he immediately heard a scream behind him and turned to see one of the men he had just fought, the green-haired man, struck by a shuriken thrown from somewhere else, making our protagonist realize there were more of these men hiding. Puzzled, he wondered if they killed him to stop information from leaking, now wearing a look of concern, questioning if this was normal in the real martial arts world, maybe getting killed by allies. The next day, when the sun was out, a group gathered where the incident occurred, all looking down at the dead bodies. Our protagonist informed them the dead men were martial artists, and someone else stated they seemed to have learned dark arts. Jin So-young then looked at our protagonist, stating he was surprisingly dependable, causing our boy to grow shy and fake a little humility, saying it was nothing. But Jin immediately stated our boy needed to be careful as he couldn't survive out here by simply being strong, to which our boy answered seriously, agreeing. Immediately, Jin turned to Huang, scolding him slightly, telling him to be more careful next time and control his drinking as his life was on the line while he was out cold, causing an ashamed Huang to look down, apologizing for his actions. Almost as if to save Huang from further scolding, Hong So-hyung called Jin's attention, asking him to look at something. Carefully examining one of the dead man's hands, he realized there were signs of poisoning on his finger, and Jin distinctly realized this was the same poison cult members used for suicide, confirming they were definitely part of the dark cult. Realizing the gravity of their situation, he suggested sending a message to the main clan, but then he realized something else. If he sent a message about this, he'd have to put Gun Chung's name as their dispatcher/killer. This meant Gun Chung would be in danger from now on, and to Jin Sayang this implied a reason the main clan had sent the boy here. Even with these thoughts, he informed the others to send a message, also telling them he'd informed the town. A few days later, informants in town failed to locate the remaining dark cultists, but the world now knew of their return. And amidst these rumors, Guan Chang's name was frequently brought up. Meanwhile, the main protagonist prepared to leave, and they bid him farewell, saying it was fun having him. And our boy did the same to his Sayangs, saying he'd learned a lot. Hearing this, Jin joked he hadn't been with them long and should just try not to forget them. And after Hong Sa-hyung wished him luck and Huang hoped they'd meet again, our protagonist bowed slightly to his Sa-hyungs, stating they would all meet again. As our boy walked away, Jin spoke internally, stating he didn't need to worry after all. Now on his way, our boy seemed disappointed, showing it on his face, stating to himself that the main clan had already recovered the item, but even then hadn't located the cultists. He realized this might mean he had to go back to continuing his pilgrimage training, having hoped he'd learn from the Sayangs for a month or two about the world. But now he was leaving so soon, a fact he didn't like. But now, as if wanting to change his mood, he stopped abruptly, asking himself where he'd go next. Seemingly having thought of somewhere, he asked himself if he should go there despite it being quite far. Later, as the day darkened, we see our protagonist making his way out of a bamboo forest, thinking that if he just went a little further, he'd reach the Moyong family house, one of the most influential families. As he dusted off bamboo leaves, he talked about getting nice food and a place to stay when he arrived. But immediately, he exclaimed, realizing there was still more forest ahead. It seemed he'd gotten himself lost. After realizing he was lost, he checked his supplies, reaching into his sack and listing what he brought: rice, a pot, dried pumpkins. But with wide eyes, he exclaimed he forgot flint and stone, the most important things. He then remembered being a huge Bear Grylls fan in his past life, deciding it was time to use those skills. So he attempted to start a fire, vigorously rubbing a twig against a plank, creating some smoke, but nothing happened. Realizing the twig was wearing out, he stopped, wailing that Mr. Grylls made it look easy and everything he learned was useless. Sighing, he stared at the plank, wondering if he could use his inner chi somehow. Taking the twig again and twisting it, he thought the basic principle was creating friction by spinning the stick to form fire, surmising that adding chi while spinning would strengthen the heat. And as he said this, he began practicing it, releasing chi from his hands to the stick. He then caused a thread of purple chi to wrap around the stick, turning it even faster, creating much friction. And he asked himself if applying chi to one side created this much friction, what would happen with both sides at the same time? Already putting it into practice, grinding at the wood plank in front of him with vigor. Soon, he realized it turned into spiral chi energy, leaving him in awe as it swirled. And looking at it, he understood that if he continued this, he wouldn't need the stick at all. Scooping up a handful of grass, he used the technique to form fire, and almost immediately, a huge burning flame, just as he wanted, was right in front of him. As he began to prepare his newly made food, he noted that although it wasn't the proper use for his techniques, at least now he'd learned how to light a fire without flint and stone, allowing him to sit and enjoy cooking his meal in that wilderness. 10 days later, he walked tiredly down a grassy field, wondering if he was any closer to the town he was headed to, looking haggard, exclaiming how hungry and tired he was. Looking at the large and expansive area, he remarked on China's size, and just then, his eyes widened, realizing a big rabbit was feeding in the grass right in front of him. When the creature noticed him gawking, it turned to face him, and our boy was already imagining the creature cooked and ready to eat. The creature then began to run away as he ran after it, saying he'd catch it with his lightweight technique. But time and time again, our boy tried to grab it, and time again, the thing evaded him. Realizing he had a real chance this time, he smiled. And one final time he lunged, jumping to catch it, finally succeeding, yelling, "Gotcha!" And the rabbit looked quite surprised it had been caught. But, unfortunately, in catching the rabbit, the protagonist somehow didn't realize the cliff ahead, and he cried loudly as he fell from it, tumbling down into the forest below with a loud noise. Even with that, he still wore a smile, holding his catch like a trophy. And as he started to speak of how easy it would be to make a fire, he began to notice how cute the rabbit actually was. Immediately, he started petting it, stating it had really good self-defense. Seeing that now he couldn't kill it at all, he dropped it on the floor, and it ran away immediately as he said goodbye. Looking at it go, he wondered if maybe he should have carried it with him a bit longer, and just then he heard a loud moo like a cow, which caused him to turn his head, wondering if it really was a cow, starting to wonder if a village was nearby. He then started to wonder what direction it would be, turning his head as he did. And to be sure, he listened in anticipation, hoping the cow would make a sound one more time. When it did, he took off, heading east, realizing that was the direction he needed to go. Now in the town he desperately tried to find, he made his way straight to a restaurant and yelled out his food order. And soon after he was done eating, absolutely stuffed, he sighed, stating he felt alive now. After watching him do all this, the owner of the establishment turned to a man wearing a piece of cloth on his head beside her, who told her he had a bad feeling about our protagonist. And now as she looked at him again, seeing his rough hair and tattered clothes, she immediately confronted him, asking if he could actually afford to pay for the meal he just consumed, and he stated that he could. But when he reached into his clothes to pull out the money, he realized his money pouch was gone. After realizing his money was gone, he remembered dropping it while chasing the rabbit. The man with the cloth on his head then demanded he show the money, alarming our boy. As he sat, not knowing what to do, he felt humiliated as a martial artist for not having money to pay, finding the idea of dining and dashing shameful. He then unexpectedly asked the man an off-topic question, if he was having trouble performing in the bedroom, which alarmed not only the man but also some nearby people. The man angrily rolled up his sleeves, asking if he believed someone like him could have such problems, telling the boy to stop asking nonsense, feeling he was trying to trick them and not pay. But his wife, running the restaurant beside him, stopped him, seemingly interested in the boy's offer. Next thing, the protagonist drew a talisman, gave it to the woman, claiming it would improve their bedroom performance if placed under his pillow, and she happily accepted it despite her husband's embarrassment. Soon, the protagonist set up a quick business, yelling he'd sell talismans to anyone who cared for one, even offering a discount for those who ate at the restaurant. Because it was customary for the Zongnam clan to pass down knowledge on reading futures, suggesting paths, and undoing misfortune, he could easily offer these. Although ancient people couldn't tell if it was true, it certainly helped ease their worries. Thanks to what he taught them, he bought a good compass to guide his steps, and with other newly bought items like a high-quality sword, again wondered if he should continue his journey. Next, somewhere else in the Hunan Castle Mountains, Inside the Shaolin monastery, the head abbot, a bald old man looking like a typical monk, conversed with others, asking if they believed him now, but they stared blankly, saying nothing, which made him continue, stating none listened before. Still wanting them to speak, he pushed them with harsh words, making the Huangbo clan leader next to him state the head abbot was being too harsh. The head abbot asked if he really thought so, and the clan leader continued that they hadn't believed it before because there was no evidence. Angered, the Shaolin head abbot yelled that while they bickered and asked for evidence, a person died, chi covering his feet as he spoke. Still full of contained anger, the old man stated it didn't matter anyway as the enemy had already started moving, and that wasn't the only problem. Hearing that, another man at the table, a long-haired man with green eyes, asked if he meant the third-generation ambassador, suspecting as much. Then the monk added that information from the Beggars sect, a martial arts group that gathers info, revealed not only the Dark Cult but also other groups like Ghosts of the Sun, the North Sea Ice Palace, and the Southern Bellflower Gates had all started mobilizing. To explain each group, first, the Ghosts of the Sun ruled the desert even in extreme heat, wearing garbs like avatars sand-benders. The North Sea Ice Palace dominated the snowy north, their techniques opposing the Ghosts of the Sun created from frigid climates. And the Southern Bellflower Gates consisted of the Five Poisons Gate, the Beastfield Gate, and the Blood Palace Gate, all in constant power struggles and clashes. Getting back to the conversation, the Jagal clan leader, that same green-eyed, long-haired man, asked the head abbot who would assume leadership, and the abbot, suspecting his intent, asked why he'd ask such a question. The clan leader then asked if he hadn't already suggested a leader, adding he nominated the Namgang clan leader, a handsome dark-haired man also seated at the table. This caused the head abbot to ask, right there with everyone, if having the Sword King title wasn't already enough trouble for him to take on something else. Meanwhile, as the meeting went on, the Huangbo clan leader thought of the so-called Sword King, even glaring at him, the airless Sword King no one could compete with except the Heavenly Ambassador, but he didn't understand why he'd be nominated. Only 4 people there were among the 16 strongest martial artists, the hidden Poison King of Heaven, the airless Sword King, the monstrous Zhuge Shang, and the beast Yu Mangu. Next, the others turned to this so-called beast, an old man seated in a corner, asking his opinion, and he stated he wished not to answer. Feeling an old man like him couldn't offer insight, and being a squad leader was already too stressful. The old man beast then added that Zhuge Shang had gone missing. After some discussion and seeing no one else would take the position, the head abbot asked Namgung what he thought. He answered that although he felt undeserving, if ordered by the head abbot, he'd fulfill his duties to the utmost. And that was how the Martial Arts Confederation was formed again with the Sword King as its leader. Meanwhile, feeling the forces of good gathering, the forces of evil banded together and formed their own organization called Wicked Blood. Things seemed about to get real fast. Back with our main protagonist, he made his way down a path, the weight of his carriage sack impeding movement, making him wonder if he'd bought too much. As he walked, he thought how in his past life, marching drills caused aches, but now such things were no problem, and he smiled, satisfied, crediting it to his harsh training. But as his stomach growled, he realized he couldn't bear his incessant hunger. This made him stop to make a quick meal, needing time to recharge anyway, and he decided he'd head to Yellow River tomorrow. After that, he tried to take a bite of his newly made beef stew but was interrupted by a loud sound in the distance. Annoyed, he turned to look, wondering who was making such a sound in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a woman stood face to face, fending off 2 men who wished to harm her. One man spoke, calling her Yoma, telling her if she surrendered, they'd teach her something fun, the other giggling. Seeing this, the girl smiled deviously, confidently holding her sword despite an abdominal injury, cursed at them, and stated no woman in the world would want to play with them. In the bushes, our protagonist, Gun Chung, watched this play out. Surprised a girl was doing all this. Still seeing the sight and hearing the men's rejected offer, our protagonist couldn't help but internally note their degeneracy. And angered by the lady rejecting them, they decided to attack, coming straight for her as she stood ready to fight, daring them to bring it on. But to their surprise, our protagonist immediately stepped between the woman and the men, greeting everyone casually as if he knew them, causing the woman's jaw to drop and the men to simply stare, none knowing where the stranger had come from. Before they could say anything, he outstretched his hand at the men, sending a blast of chi he termed a cutting wave, which went straight for them, hitting some. And as the battlefield view panned out, it affected quite a lot, especially those up front. As one of the men lay on the floor, seemingly burnt by the attack, their leader realized the technique used was from the Yongnam clan and wondered aloud what someone from that clan was doing here, seemingly bothered by the fact. Our boy then answered he was there because they were evil, and as a disciple of justice, he had to stop them. But as he saw the men just staring, he told them it didn't matter either way as they either had to fight him or leave. Swirling his hands, he prepared to attack again, and the bandit leader noticed he was using a Tai-yul technique, seeming quite impressed. And likewise, as he prepared the attack, our protagonist asked the man if he really recognized his technique, wondering who they truly were, probably why they were so familiar with it. The bandit leader then yelled for his men to attack our boy, and they all rushed in together against him, making him remark on their numbers. But he still charged an attack against them he called the Five Thunders Crown, blasting it against the multitude, sending many flying. After that, the bandit leader came at our protagonist himself, charging straight at him with a chi attack of his own. Soon, both faced one another, hands up against each other. But then Gun Chung used his energy to push the leader away, the wave even affecting some of the rest of his friends. And soon they were screaming and coughing. And after that, as our protagonist stood with the bodies of his enemies sprawled out on the ground in front of him, he realized he had unintentionally killed them, and he didn't like this. Though he realized he wasn't as shaken by it as he thought he'd be, he attributed that fact to his training. Turning to the wounded woman behind him, he asked if she was okay, and she confirmed she was, thanking him. Taking a closer look, our boy stated she looked quite strong, adding she had even taken some of them down while they were trying to get away. Feeling flattered, she blushed, stating it was nothing much. She seemed like she wanted to continue telling him about her ordeal with those men, but she soon realized he was in the middle of starting something else, asking what he was doing. He seemed to be digging a hole, much to her surprise and confusion. Later, we realized he was actually digging the hole to make a mass grave for the slain men. And when she asked him about it, he told her he felt bad and felt like they at least deserved that despite being terrible people. Taking a few steps forward, he told her he'd tend to her wounds back in his camp, informing her he knew a few healing techniques that would help. After mulling it over, she decided to go with him. As they went towards his camp, he informed her he was a third-generation member of the Yeongnam clan, and she was surprised given his age. He then asked her what name she preferred, wanting to call her Nuna, female martial artist, but asked if she'd prefer another, and she just pointed out he'd been calling her Nuna the whole time anyway. He then introduced himself properly as Gun Chung, asking what her real name was. For some reason, she thought a little before answering, stating her name to be Seol Hee. He then called her by name and asked how old she was, stating he guessed she'd be close in age to his Gonyun Saju. She quickly shut that down, stating she was over 30 years of age. Hearing that, he briefly mentioned his age, 18. Also stating Saoli reminded him of his Saju, who was 10 years older than him. On reaching the camp, the wounded woman then asked if this was really where he was talking about, seeing it wasn't much of a camp but more of a solitary cooking pot on a fire out in the woods. She sighed, wondering why a martial artist would lie. Gun Chung chimed in immediately, stating he didn't lie as the fire helped fend off animals, and since it was open, they could see the stars all night. He then pointed to the pot of soup he was making on the fire, stating it would satisfy her hunger, adding that here in the forest, these things were considered a luxury, and he asked her to sit with him. But as he spoke, she fell to the floor with a loud thud, taking his attention away from the food he was making, and we see now that she was on the floor, on her knees, coughing profusely, causing Gun Chung to be alarmed as he called out to her while she continued to cough up blood profusely.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.